Hello kids and welcome to another Mr. Parker's Bedtime Stories. I hope you've had another good day. It's been crazy weather today, hasn't it? 1 minute beautiful sunshine and so hot. The next minute hot and muggy and an absolute downpour. It was really strong, wasn't it? We just got inside so luckily didn't get wet at school. We're continuing this wonderful series of My Little Miss World by Roger Hargreaves that we can enjoy this evening. And tonight's one is about someone who just can't stop talking. And it is, of course, Little Miss Chatterbox. I think she was in some of the last few Mr. Men as well. She came in, so let's see what she gets up to and if she actually does stop talking at any point. Let's find out. Little Miss Chatterbox talked more than a lot. She talked all the time. Day in and day out, week after week, month after month, year in and year out, she never stopped. She didn't know it, but she even talked in her sleep. Look at that. It's like she's talking now, you can see. Either that or it's a really creepy smile. She had a brother. I bet you can guess what his name was, can't you? That's right, Mr. Chatterbox. She looks a bit like him, don't you think? You should have heard them when they got together. You couldn't get a word in edgeways, or sideways, or anyways. Have you ever heard about somebody being able to talk the hind leg off a donkey? It's a saying. Well, Mr. Chatterbox could talk both hind legs off a donkey, and his sister could talk the hind leg off an elephant. Now, this story is about the time little Miss Chatterbox decided to get herself a job in a bank. In a bank in Happyland. She wouldn't be able to serve many customers, would she? She'd just be talking to them. At 10 o'clock one Monday morning, Mr. Happy, who else is in every story, strolled into the Happy to Lend You bank in the middle of Happy Town. He took out his checkbook, wrote a cheque, and went to the counter. Behind the counter, on her first morning at work, stood little Miss Chatterbox. She smiled at Mr. Happy. Mr. Happy smiled back. "Good morning," he said cheerfully. "Well," said little Miss Chatterbox, taking a deep breath. Oh no, she's going to go off on a big rant, isn't she? He's never going to be able to speak. For the time of the year, it is a good morning, but not quite as good as the morning we have had yesterday. And I dare say tomorrow morning will be an even better morning, but it's quite a good morning for Monday morning. And she went on and on and on until it was time for the bank to shut. Mr. Happy was still standing there with his mouth open in amazement. He'd been there for hours. Oh dear, the bank's not going to make much money then, is it? And now, continued little Miss Chatterbox, it's time for the bank to shut and time for me to go home. So goodbye and nice talking to you and she went home, leaving poor Mr. Happy without any money. Oh, poor Mr. Happy, not being able to put his cheque in. Hope he doesn't have any big bills coming in. The following morning she was fired. She got herself another job in a restaurant, the Eat A Lot. I wonder if you can guess who might be at the Eat A Lot. Which Mr. Man? That's right, Mr. Greedy, of course. It was Tuesday morning, and at midday Mr. Greedy walked into the restaurant and sat himself down at his usual corner table. He always ate there on Tuesdays because that was the day they served extra large portions. That sounds amazing. I'll have to go there. Obviously when lockdown's over and it's open. The waitress came up to take his order. "What's the soup of the day?" Mr. Greedy asked the waitress. Oh dear, she's going to start talking about soup, isn't she, for ages? Let's find out. "Well," said little Miss Chatterbox, for she was the waitress, "the soup of the day is tomato, but we also have other soups on the menu, such as oxtail and vegetable and chicken noodle, but we have lots of other things to start with, such as..." And she went on and on and on until midnight. Mr. Greedy was still sitting there listening in amazement. He'd been there for 12 hours listening. Now for Mr. Greedy, that would be like going without food for weeks, surely. Poor thing. I wonder if she's going to keep this job. Don't have much hope for her. "And now," continued little Miss Chatterbox, "it's time for the Eat A Lot restaurant to shut and time for me to go home. So goodbye and nice talking to you and and she went home, leaving poor Mr. Greeder feeling rather empty. Doesn't look very happy, does he? The next morning she was fired. The same thing happened all week long. On Thursday morning she was fired from her shop as an assistant in a hat shop. Miss Splendid went into the shop to buy herself a new hat, but she couldn't. "Oh, madam, I've just the hat for you, and I know you're going to just love it because it's pink, and pink is your colour, and it was all talk and no hat." Oh, hopefully they can find something for her to do. On Friday morning she was fired from her job as a secretary to Mr. Uppity. Mr. Uppity, incidentally, was the richest man in the world. Just thought I'd let you like to know. But poor Mr. Uppity didn't make any money the day that little Miss Chatterbox was working for him. Oh, no. "Oh, Mr. Uppity, I've never worked in an office before. Isn't it exciting? And would you like a cup of coffee? And as you are rich, and are you as rich as everybody says you are? And if you are, and it was all talk and no work." He looks worried about his money, doesn't he? And like he's thinking about a plan to maybe be able to sort her Chatterbox situation out. I wonder if he can find someone to solve it. But this story has a happy ending, because at the very end of that week, little Miss Chatterbox managed to find herself a job that suited her down to the ground and up to the sky. I wonder what this job might be. Let's find out. That Saturday morning, Mr. Chatterbox was at home in Chatterbox Cottage, which was where he lived. In a weird roof, isn't it? Or no roof. Hope he's got something so it doesn't leak. Mr. Chatterbox was cross because his watch had stopped, and he had arranged to meet little Miss Sunshine at 7 o'clock, and he had no idea what the time was. So he decided to telephone the speaking clock to find out what time it was. He dialed the number. And at the third stroke it will be 6:25 and 15 seconds. Little Miss Chatterbox took a deep breath. Pip, pip, pip. At the third stroke it will be 6:25 and 20 seconds. Pip, pip. That's funny, thought Mr. Chatterbox to himself. That sounds just like my sister. Oh, they have found her a job to do. I hope you enjoyed that wonderful story of Little Miss Chatterbox. It's probably one of my favourite Little Miss story. Tomorrow we have someone who I've not heard of before. Little Miss, another word for spots or spotty, Little Miss, and it rhymes with it as well. See if you can work it out. So tune in tomorrow to enjoy the next of our Little Miss World stories. Hope you enjoyed that, and I will hopefully see you tomorrow, hopefully with better weather. Hope you have a great evening and a great day tomorrow. See you later, guys.